parents knew how to warn me about behavior from toxic men like reckless driving, but they didn't know how to prepare me for corporate America. And that is not a parental failing on their part, that is a social class difference. It's great that your parents knew how to teach you how to deal with a narcissistic boss in a white collar way that doesn't get stigmatized. But the working class way, being direct and being like, what's the problem, often results in people from these backgrounds getting in more trouble at work, their career promotions getting stifled, and even fired or being blamed as the problem themselves. It's toxic and fucked up. It is a privilege to have parents that can pass on that information for you. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing or that you shouldn't have it. But what I'm aiming to do with my work, as I've been researching the unwritten rules of social class for 10 years, is to normalize having these conversations in organizations about what the unwritten rules are and how to navigate them. I had a client last year who, when I was prepping for a workshop, one of them was a white man from a blue-collar background. Most of his team was with Black and Middle Eastern women from various class backgrounds, and he led in the organization what they called the blue-collar caucus. And I remember him asking me when I walked through what I was going to talk to their team about, can you make it really clear that these unwritten rules that people learn from their parents they're not told they're unwritten rules, and they're not told that it's a problem. I was like, oh, absolutely. Rich parents or middle-class parents don't sit their kids down with a PowerPoint and say, here's all the unwritten rules, don't tell the poor kids. And he laughed and was like, exactly. Like, I need you to make that really clear. And I did, and I've just made it kind of normalized in that when I present, talking about these are things that are just considered normal in that group. How they handle conflict at work is likely how their family handled conflict. So if they're passive aggressive or avoidant, that's just normal to them. That's not something that they had to shift. But for people whose families did have direct conflict, did show emotional expression, this is different for us. I've been showing this in background because even though I'm not a parent and I am always very hesitant to say anything close to parenting advice, I was interviewed by a parenting support and consulting group, Miss Poppins, a few months ago, and they wrote a few articles based on our interview and have a podcast. You can see the highlights of the conversation. I see this for free when I type in my name in Miss Poppins, so I don't think there's a pay block to it. But if this resonates, hopefully that helps. I made a few posts about it on LinkedIn. I hear from parents all the time who want to know, how do I raise my kids to be able to navigate these unwritten rules? The advice I give them is pretty much knowing them yourself and how to talk about them, and we can work on that. But ultimately know that parents raise their kids to survive in the environment they think they will be in. And among the working class, they're being raised to take orders. And this becomes a problem when the child moves up the career ladder, is more successful than they anticipated, and then they have to be the one who's self-promoting, negotiating, and setting boundaries. That's all very different skills than were expected of them at a working class job, and it's never acknowledged. And that's probably why I've just hit 10 million views on my videos in the last year as someone who is not an influencer, because this is a very real experience. It's not a parental failing, it is a class culture difference.